Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So I'm finally ready to share my Rogue Whisperknife build to you guys. I've done a whole bunch of testing over the past few weeks, figuring out what is good to use. Yesterday I made a video just showcasing how to play it, what powers to use, and what's set up for what situation. There are different ways, and I don't really think the devs have finally finished adjusting certain things, so you may have to keep an eye out on any future updates. So just a quick showcase of what this build will get you. Well, when you're in combat and you've got all your gear procced off, you will end up with all those 90%. Nice, sweet 90s. So that's like you've maxed out on your damage. Now, on top of that, you do have some damage buffs like these weapons, these boots, and this setup right here is for within the Moondancer trial. So this is where you're within wild space. Thus the reason to use those weapons and those boots. But in other content, you might want to use the perfect weapons. If you're in scaled content where, for example, the mirage weapons wouldn't work, then you would run these perfect weapons from the demon web pits. And this build will also, in combat while attacking your targets, get you your 90%. You will have to be in combat for a little bit to get the perfect weapons to stack up. So it's not like the best for multi-target content, but you really won't miss much outside of that, especially with this ring giving you the crit severity boost there. You might be shy on a little bit of crit. But then we do have the mirage weapons set up. So again, this is for master content, where the mirage weapons will perform really well. Where you have your master temple of the spider, Enchantments reliquary, and your demon web pits dungeon. The new trial does not really favor the mirage weapons because of, the area of effect damage in there is significant, and mirage weapons just don't do well when you have lots of targets. And again, you're getting all those 90% as well. Nice and easy with this setup. We are of course playing Whisperknife. So let's cover this build and everything you need to set up like I have with regards to your different loadouts. Most of them have exactly the same stuff, one or few changes, and we'll cover that. Keep in mind you do not have to copy everything I use. I will cover alternatives, and ultimately this build is supposed to also be a guide that will help you build up your own character, give you the information so that you know how to build up and optimize for yourself. So there'll be timestamps on the play bar below where you can skip to any section you're most interested in, and we're going to jump to our powers. Again, I've explained different setups you can use in my previous video. Check that out if you're very interested, but this is like the setup I would use for everything. Multi-target content and single target content. The only exception would be to switch to dagger threat instead of your advantageous position if you know you can get combat advantage against your boss all the time. So if you just have one target. But if you have lots of enemies, really powerful to have this combat advantage damage against them regardless of where they're positioned. So our at-wills, you want to have disheartening strike, maintain the damage over time effect and the debuff. So every 10 seconds make sure to cast this and that your enemy has this effect on them. So that'll only be prevalent when you're attacking like a boss or something with lots of hit points, and otherwise you're using Cloud of Steel. And I generally just stick with this, and Shuriken toss works. It's got okay damage. The cast time's not so bad either. It will bounce up to 2 targets, can give you slightly more damage. Feel free to use it when you do have multiple targets. Cloud of Steel is just the go-to for single target. For the encounters, Blade Flurry. And you never want to cast it so it goes on cooldown. You will always cast it from stealth. So you can see you go in stealth, you cast it, and it does not go on cooldown. Never cast it so it goes on cooldown. You need it to break the stealth. You need it to consume that effect. It does lots of area damage around you as well, which is buffed up with this feat. But ultimately, you're trying to trigger your shadow opportunity. You leave stealth, which causes then all of your attacks to basically deal 250 magnitude per hit, which is just huge. And we combine that with Smoke Bomb, which is like 9 hits, and each hit will also trigger shadowy opportunity if you cast Smoke Bomb after you have left stealth. And you can have left stealth and then waited 2 seconds before casting Smoke Bomb, and still all the hits will trigger this, and it's just massive amounts of damage. It's huge. You're combining Smoke Bomb also with your Enchanter's Hex to give it some extra damage as well. And then our third encounter power, I like to use a Vengeance Pursuit. And this is mainly just to get that stealth regen. You're going Blade Flurry from Stealth, Smoke Bomb, and then Vengeance Pursuit to get the stealth back up, and it also has a nice teleport effect. It will hit 3 times for regenerating stealth through Return to the Shadows, so it's really good for that, and it does not go on cooldown if you kill your target with the first hit. You can go and use that hit again on another target. But there are alternatives. You can use Path of Blades instead of it, you can use Blitz instead of it, you can use Shadow Strike instead of it. Just depends on the situation. If you just want some extra burst damage, Blitz is good. If you want some damage against enemies that are spread out a lot, Path of Blades is good. And if you just want some extra damage against one target only, Shadow Strike is good if you don't need the extra stealth regen. It also has the debuff ability, causing your attacks to deal a bit more damage. For the daily power, it's just Killing Storm everywhere, multi-target content, single target content, because you're combining it with Razor Action, which, yeah, it's going to trigger Razor Action 13 times. So that's 13 times 200 magnitude. That's over 2000 already. It's massive amounts of damage, that combination, and it's better than anything else you can use. It may very well get fixed. Your mechanics here, you have your roll just to quickly get out of a bad situation and for a bit of movement. You get immunity frames with that as well. Your tab is your stealth effect, and keep in mind you also gain a damage boost when you leave stealth through Cunning Ambusher, which is 10%. So you're always regenerating stealth, getting this effect when you leave stealth combined with this effect, and you just stack them all up for so much damage, and it's really good. Class features, again, like we mentioned, Razor Action for the daily power, and then an advantageous position when you're beating up groups of enemies. And if you're just against one boss, you can go with Dagger Threat. For the feats, this is 100% the best setup there is right now, until they make any other changes or fix any bugs. Steady Preparations for the cooldowns is really good. Dark Reimbursement for the stealth regen, it's better than the bottom one. Third feat here, Return to the Shadows, is better than the top one, just because you're casting encounter powers far more often than this will only trigger it once every 15 seconds. And then Shadowy Opportunity, far more reliable than Shadow of Demise, especially after they kind of nerfed it. And the last feat here, Ambusher's Haste, just to make your Blade Flurry basically deal 40% more damage every time you're casting it. You're casting it a lot. You're going to get this encounter power of 300 magnitude, be hitting over 1,000,000 combined with this buff. It's just huge. So that's all the power setup. Again, just to quickly cover the rotation so you're aware, you want to be always casting Blade Flurry from stealth. That's like what you do, and then Smoke Bomb, and then you can go some at-wills, and then you go Vengeance for some stealth, Blade Flurry from stealth, and then you can use like your Vengeance again, the last hit, and a few at-wills, and again Blade Flurry. If you're against one boss, just one enemy, make sure you're using Disheartening Strike to get that up, get some stealth, and then go Blade Flurry from stealth, Smoke Bomb. You can use some more Shadow Vengeance to get your stealth again, and ultimately the best thing you can do to optimize is space out your Blade Flurries. If you do get like a big boost in stealth regen, like from using Smoke Bomb and maybe some Vengeance, you might want to wait a few seconds till Shadowy Opportunity is gone from your buff bar before you use that stealth again, so you can maximize your uptime. If you're in an artifact call, you will be just going like your artifact, having Disheartening Strike, Blade Flurry, Smoke Bomb, Daily, Vengeance, and then Vengeance again for more stealth, Blade Flurry, and you will be wanting to throw your mountain at like the peak time in the artifact call, so that'll be when your artifact's at around 55 seconds on the cooldown there. Just be aware that your feature sadly here will not affect your damage of your mount power, so kind of irrelevant. I don't believe Gutterborns will affect it either. And you will not be gaining the bonus damage with your daily power because you're leaving stealth, and you want to leave stealth before you cast Killing Storm, so it triggers your Shadowy Opportunity as well. It's pretty straightforward, just optimize your timing. And so from there, we go to stats and ratings. What do you want to prioritize as a damage dealer? Well, it's pretty straightforward, just these 5 stats. And you generally want to do it in the priority of power first, then combat advantage, then critical severity, then critical strike, and then accuracy. However, you want to be aware of item level, and if you're not scaled, that will also contribute to your overall damage. And then you also want to focus on items that are going to give you particular damage buffs. So like these weapons, these boots, and you should be able to still get your stats very high with having also other damage bonuses. Like again, with this build, we have all 90%. That's including weapons here, boots, including the 3 companions for damage, the knight, Minsk, and also the Batiri. We can switch the Batiri to something else when you go in multi-target content. We'll discuss that in a sec, but that's really about it for the stats. Choose gear and stuff that's going to give you those and just focus on whatever is going to give you the most. So then we go to our gear and alternatives you can use. Again, this is the setup I'm using for the Moondancer trial. All you really have is these weapons and these boots. When we switch to using the Mirage weapons, we now have these enchanted boots to give us the critical severity. That also frees up the enhancement here to use like armor break. The same when we use like the perfect weapons, we can use that armor break here as a debuff, and we're using like these boots for critical severity. Alternatively, you can ditch the critical severity boots. You can use different ones like primal ones. You can use damage ones like rusted ones or from dragon hunts, and then use a personal buff here for the crit severity to make up for it. Very flexible there, which is nice. So this gear we're using, let's explain where it comes from. The headpiece, that's from your campaign, Menza Baranzin, and you'll upgrade it with Demon Web Pits. The armor comes from your dragon hunts. You'll need to do that with Dragon Slayer and you'll be able to buy them. The arms come from the Master Demon Web Pits dungeon when you kill the bosses. Alternatives to those is like the Mighty Vambraces from Dragon Hunts. Could use these petrified ones, they're just very expensive, avoid them. But you get like the spike ones, shielded ones, and yeah, just go with whatever is going to help you when you're building up and get these eventually. The weapons, like we said, you want like perfect weapons for trials and boss fights when you're not in a particular content. When you're not in the Moondancer trial, use these for every other trial, except if you're in master content, then use Mirage. And that's only 3 pieces of content: Temple of the Spider, Examiner's Reliquary, and a Demon Web Pits. Outside of that, they're pretty terrible and perfect weapons are better. The boots, again, we've got these enchanted ones. We've also got the damage, the Starhide ones from the new trial. Then you also could use Abyss ones for combat advantage. The Wastelands are the same. You could use Primal ones. Again, if you don't need the crit severity here, because you use a bonus here for crit severity instead, then yeah, you could do that. For the neck and waist piece, we're going with the Shroomwood set, and this works very well because the cooldown is really low of like Vengeance Pursuit. We're using Blade Flurry a lot, and then Smoke Bomb in between as well. And ultimately, you should be able to maintain all of the stacks from that to gain all that extra accuracy, and then you also get a boost in recharge speed. You just get this from the auction house. An alternative, yes, is the Detector set. You can get that from the new trial, the Moondancer, but you could also get like the Demogorgon set from the Demogorgon trial. That's also useful. I would avoid the Mythalar set from now on. It just doesn't work, just not worth it. The ring comes from the new trial, Critical Strike. You can get other rings with that, like the Soothsayer's Ring from Absolution from Dragon Hunts with Crit Strike. You could get the Illustrious Obligation with Crit Strike from Temple of the Spider. And then there's some other rings you can use. We were using like this Accuracy one. There's an Accuracy one you can use here as well from the Advanced Moondancer trial. And there's like Beauty Ring. You can mess around with stats. In some content you may want some damage against enemy types, like here, dragons, abrasion against beholders, and we'd use that instead of like the accuracy ring. You'll have to do a bit of stat adjusting to make it fit, and it can be sometimes not worth it unless you really want to min-max for that content. For the shirt and trousers, we just got these from the Demon Web Pit zone, from those heroic encounters. You can buy them also from the auction house, and they just give you the set bonus there and their bonuses, which are pretty neat. There's alternatives. You can use like the corroded shirt for combat advantage if you don't have, let's say, a tutor in the group, and the trousers you can use for like getting power, these ones, if you don't have like a raptor group. You can also use a new shirt that would give you damage, but you'll lose hit points, and it's up to you. From here we move to our enchantment section, and it only really matters in offense. Here we have like 2 cobalts and a jade, and in utility always a garnet. But if we go to like the Mirage set here, we're using now 2 jades, a citrina, and a cobalt. And if we go to the perfect weapons, we're using 2 jades, a citrine, and an amethyst. So you will have to balance with those. In defense, just use your spare enchantments. It's whatever. But if you really wanted to optimize, you just have garnets in all of them. For overloads, Devil's Precision and Ray of Flames, usually the best for everything. There are some overloads you can use against particular enemy types. The 10% ones can be pretty good, or even the 8% ones. Combat enchantment, you should go with Lightning Flash, hands down the best. Bonus enchantment, Recharge Speed. For the artifacts, we just have high item level ones. Get the ones that are accessible to you. I don't recommend running like the Storyteller book unless you're in scaled content, which can be a lot of the time if you're newer. But that's expensive set to get and can just be better getting these higher item level ones. But like the Wand of Domination, it might not be worth the cost. This Spelljammer one is pretty good. You can use it as primary and you can buy it pretty cheaply. And the crystal comes from that lockbox. It's account wide on Mythic, also pretty good to pick up because you can use it as primary as well. And this Astral Seed one from the new campaign, Light of Xeraxis, you can get it through that and upgrade it. With that, we go to our race and ability scores. On this build, we're going with Wood Elf. I find this just the easiest to build around because it will give you the bonus of critical strike. Otherwise, you just can choose a race that's going to give bonuses to these stats. For the ability scores, we just have strength and dexterity. If you don't need so much dexterity because you have like crit severity at like 90% in combat, then feel free to go charisma instead. Then we move to our companions. Here, ideally, you'll have support companions in your group. So I'm running Portobello right now. If nobody else in the group has it, I'll use him because of the D&D in session, giving the stats. But if you just want to run a striker, that is very well and good. And there's many options you can use. There's like Pseudo Dragon, Greenscale Bowman, Black Death Scorpion. You can check my companion document linked in the video description below. Just be aware of the notes on those companions and don't get fooled. Some of them have good damage, but only in my test. Just, yeah, make sure to read the side notes on them. For the companion equipment, we'd ideally actually want to get some upgrades of this. In the new campaign, Light of Xeraxis, you can do some farming and you can get the companion gear here. And we're going with the ones to fit our build, which has the stats of accuracy and combat advantage. Here we have an enhancement which is just going to support us and our team, reducing the enemy's defense, increases all our damage against those targets, but it's only really good in single target fights. In multi-target fights, you'd be better off with some stats, but if you have that maxed already, then whatever. If you don't have a tutor in the group for the combat advantage, don't be afraid to use like acute senses and get your combat advantage up with that. Or if you're not in a raptor group, don't be afraid to use like potency for the power. Bunch of flexible things you can use here. It's just when we are in the Moondancer trial, that's when ideally we want to use potent precision for the crit severity so we can use these boots. Then for the bonuses here, you ideally do want Minsk, the Neverwinter Knight, the Raptor, the Batiri, and here we have the Alchemist. Now, instead of the Batiri, if you're in multi-target content, I would recommend the Spined Devil. You can go ahead and get this and upgrade it. When you use an encounter power, you have that chance to like burst out a hail of spikes. And you just would have that because why not? Extra bit of damage, we don't need any more stats. Batiri, totally what you want for boss damage. That's 11.25%. From there, we go to our mounts. Here in the current tab, we have Wicked Lich from the Mount Vecna. However, that will get fixed at some point. Then you can use Big B's Hand, you can use your Giant Toad, you can use your Golden Touch, or you can use your Tunnel Vision. All high single target attacks. But in multi-target, I do recommend the Pegasus with its Inspiration. High damage and quite a large area. Alternatively, to group up enemies, Vortex from that legendary carpet. We have Heroic Seal here for some extra forte. You don't really need that, honestly. You could just run with Ferocity and you can probably run with something else to give you a little bit more combat advantage, like having this shirt with that 5%. We go to the stable and this is the setup we're using. A Warlord's Motivation, Chanter's Hex, 2 Tacticians, and a Mender's Covenant. Now in terms of the insignias themselves, we have Aggression, Dominance, Brutality, and some skill here. You can see through the rest of them there. Now what matters is just the bonuses, not the actual mounts. Don't go trying to get exactly the mounts I have. Some can just be expensive or are no longer obtainable. Check my 4-slot mount document linked in the video description below. You can read through and you can find probably alternative mounts that have the same bonuses. For the collars, the only important one is encounter power and critical severity. The rest don't matter, and I wouldn't worry about upgrading them. That can just be way too costly. Just do that as like the very last thing once everything else is maxed out. From there we go to our boons. And on this page, we want to get all the offensive ones. We want to get Forte, recharge speed and action point gain here. We want to get Blessed Advantage, Life Lessons, and Bloodlust. That's ideal. Get the movement speed here as well. If you're in particular content, you might want to get Demonic Mastery to get some damage against those demons in that Demon Web Pits dungeon. And yeah, then going to the guild, we just have crit, defense, and if we're going to die, make sure you have the Revive Sickness. With that, we go to consumables and belt items. So here we have our Flask of Potencies, Squash Soup, Sunlord's Gift Elixir, Ratatouille, and you can use an Invocation Blessing for, I guess, power. On the belt items, ideally you actually want a Stone of Health here. You can get away with potions sometimes. You want to have the Dragon Fire, and here we have the Forger's Box. You can fit the Spider Totem into your build as well. It's just that's a lot harder to get, and it's good, but in the new trial it doesn't matter. So hopefully this is somewhat insightful to you guys and helps you rogues out there. Whisperknife is absolutely killing it right now. It's massive amounts of damage. Don't know how long it's going to stay that way, but this build should get you through it and set you up very nicely. If you want to go on Assassin, this build will work too, but you might want to have the Spelljammer set instead because that's easier to maintain the bonus on it, versus this only lasting 5 seconds. And if you're just going to continue to have these dropping off after using your encounters, then the recharge speed comes a little bit pointless. Again, a massive thank you to all of these channel members for their added support. You can support me for as little as €1 a month by clicking the join button down below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.